Welcome to this episode of Automotive Insiders. I'm your host, Jason Stein. Great to have you back listening with us again. As the automotive industry continues to evolve, electrification, software-defined vehicles, and shifting supply chains, there's one question that's becoming increasingly important for suppliers. Where do you build next? Because site selection today is no longer just about cost. It's about access to talent, technology, markets, and to long-term stability in a rapidly changing global environment. And that's where organizations like IDA Ireland come into focus. For decades, Ireland has positioned itself as a gateway for global companies, particularly in advanced manufacturing, technology, and life sciences. But what's less talked about is how that ecosystem is evolving to support the future of mobility. From automotive supply chains to aerospace software and advanced engineering, Ireland is building a cross-sector foundation that suppliers can plug into as they scale and diversify. Joining us today is Tony Hayes from IDA Ireland to talk about how the country is positioning itself for the next phase of industrial growth and how automotive suppliers can think about Ireland as part of their global strategy. Tony's coming up here on Automotive Insiders. Well, Tony, it's great to have you on the program. Thank you for joining Automotive Insiders.
Thanks, Jason. It's a pleasure to be here and have this opportunity.
For many of our listeners, particularly suppliers across North America, IDA Ireland may not be an organization that they interact with every day. I wonder if you can give us a bit of an overview. What is IDA Ireland and what role do you play when a company is considering expanding into Ireland?
Sure. Thanks, Jason. So for the last 80 or so years, IDA Ireland has acted as the Irish government's inward investment and development agency. So we have offices globally across, North America, Europe, Asia Pac, where we actively reach out to companies and support them with either their existing footprint in Ireland or potential opportunities to come and set something up. So it's primarily an advisory and support offering, but we also have suites of other options that are activities that we can provide folks as well, such as incentives and connections back to other stakeholders and that kind of thing. So from a North America perspective, I'm based here covering the Midwest and South from our Chicago office. So regularly in some of the key hotspots from an automotive point of view, such as the Southeast and Michigan and up here across the Midwest. But primarily it's very much a free resource to companies. So we're very much active in terms of getting in and out of our existing client companies, being at trade shows, conferences, fora where policy is discussed. So it's very much just a support service and acting as a partner on a company's investment journey.
Specifically for automotive suppliers, Tony, what does that support look like in practice that you provide? Is it site selection, incentives, talent, partnerships, or all the above?
Yeah, Jason, it's all of the above. So I think really the first instance, it's having a sounding board to kind of sound things off and discuss things with and provide a bit of blue sky thinking and that kind of discussion basis to start things off. If we look at who are in Ireland, it's, the world's leading pharmaceutical, medical device, aviation, technology, industrial technology companies. So oftentimes when I speak to tier one, tier two, or OEM partners and potential partners, it's understanding what everyone else is doing in Ireland. So, what are the functions? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? What are the, differentiating characteristics? So I think it's very much an initial kind of a free consultancy service, and it's very much a reference selling piece, if you will, where we're really discussing what others are doing in Ireland. But primarily then when they come in, it's looking at any number of opportunities. It's how Ireland could serve them from a talent perspective based on where they might be facing shortages or strategic needs across their global footprint. More often than not, the traditional route is working with an existing partner that they have, maybe a global company based in Ireland or indeed an Irish company, or then it might be something to do with accessing, the wider European market. Typically, we have a lot of US suppliers in Ireland who work with some of the European OEMs. Or it might just be a case of, using Ireland as a beachhead more broadly to kind of gain more of a foothold within Europe. So there's a variety of different reasons why people might do that. Obviously, there's a value proposition that we have, that entices people to really make that move, to look at it from the first perspective, but then actually to execute and set something up. And that's very much based on the talent. It's based on the pro-business environment. And increasingly, Jason, in a world like today, where there's a lot of, geopolitical concerns, tariffs, that kind of thing, it's the stability and the consistency of policy approach to business that really attracts folks as well.
Suppliers are always thinking about global expansion, and oftentimes they're weighing cost structures, market access, labor availability, regulatory environments, obviously. Ireland is very competitive in all of those ways. What makes it attractive for a global automotive supplier?
Sure. Well, I think it's the fact that automotive is quite in at the moment in Ireland. And I mean that in that there's a rising tide of companies who are active in that space, from OEMs to suppliers. Technology at the first instance, the fact that it's front of mind for a lot of Irish potential employees, but more so it's that kind of inbuilt operational excellence. And to be honest, Jason, that comes a lot, as we discussed off air, just on that aviation cluster and that medical device cluster, where operational excellence, the top quality of materials, regulatory requirements, adherence, are front and center. So I think not just the technology and R&D piece. We have companies doing services, supply chain management, that kind of thing. But from a manufacturing point of view or an assembly point of view, you'll see a lot of tooling and molding, panel beating, assembly, material science kind of stuff. And a lot of that is really trying, using Ireland as a base to work with companies across Europe. So when I think of it, I think of that ecosystem. I think of, suppliers such as Magna, obviously one of our larger North American suppliers using Ireland as a base. I think of some of the European suppliers then like Bosch and Valeo. And I think of even some of the more, smaller startups who are active in offering really innovative solutions, such as Sonatus and some of our domestic companies in Ireland like Provisio and Cubic.
When we think about Ireland, I think it's fair to say that it has moved from being a traditional manufacturing player at one point, although limited, right, to more of a high value, innovation driven contributor in the automotive ecosystem. Is that fair?
That's very fair, Jason. I think we still maintain a strong manufacturing base, and it's defined by advanced manufacturing, niche manufacturing, high value, high regulated activities.
Right.
But yeah, the journey or the automotive journey, so to speak, in Ireland really tracks the broader economic trajectory and growth journey. I mean, our auto history, we wouldn't traditionally be on the map as an auto powerhouse, but I think there's a really strong and distinct history nonetheless. So Henry Ford set up in Ireland in 1917. And that was a facility that lasted for many, many years, I think as far as 1984. And that tracks, the Irish journey in that that was the right facility and the right opportunity for that time. It was typically kind of lower cost, higher volume manufacturing, initially starting with tractors, actually, winning a contract with the British government to produce Fordson major tractors. And that kind of over time became a broader plant, a pretty impressive plant, but very much, looking at assembly and manufacture and that kind of thing in a way that we wouldn't compete or even kind of contend for some of those large volume projects anymore. Nowadays, the manufacturing, like I said, is typified by, talent, technology, highly kind of niche areas and typified by our lighthouse factories that we have in Ireland, from some of the big life science majors. But really, that broader shift in the economy and in our auto offering is very much based on the growth from manufacturing and low cost activity to services to high value activity. And if we think of today, our automotive journey, notwithstanding some of the smaller, maybe mid-tier and lower tier suppliers supplying European OEMs out of Ireland on the basis of, a strong manufacturing base and a good pro-business economy, our automotive, flag to the mast, so to speak, was really kickstarted in recent years by Ireland's evolution as a tech hub. So if you think of JLR, Jaguar Land Rover, and General Motors on the OEM side picking Ireland for R&D, that very much tracks the fact that they were working on an outsourced basis with companies like Intel, Hewlett Packard, and Dell. And they brought some of those functions in-house when they saw they could house it and do it in Ireland. So now you're at a point when Jaguar Land Rover, they have a massive growth trajectory in Shannon, the home of Irish aerospace, where they now have a couple of hundred people, and they're looking, it's an 88,000 square foot facility with 25 test bays, looking at the software-defined vehicle and looking at electric vehicle architecture. And then you have General Motors, both in Limerick and Dublin, initially coming into Ireland, on a pretty scoped out opportunity to do some kind of back-end technology, where now they're looking at vehicle-to-vehicle communications, in-vehicle infotainment and features, and obviously then some technology for line defect identification in their global manufacturing footprint. So, there's a really impressive move to some more higher value activity, higher value opportunities, and even the collaboration now that exists in what is truly an Irish automotive and auto tech ecosystem is the fact that some of these global players and our domestic companies are collaborating and looking at where they can push the envelope. And I think to give a great example of that is Bosch, the German supplier, who have a technology site in Ireland, partnering with an Irish domestic startup called Provisio, who do perception and depth sensing and AI radar technology for vehicles. The two of those guys partnering with the University of Limerick, who have a great software and engineering offering to partner to pull down 6.9 million euros from the European Disruptive Technology Innovations Fund, using Ireland as a basis to collaborate and really access some of that European funding to do greater things. So I think what you're seeing now between those guys and, like I mentioned, startups like Sonatus coming in from the US, Irish companies like Cubic and others, there's really a small but mighty ecosystem there that offers definitely food for thought for any tier 1, 2, or 3 supplier, or indeed any OEMs who might be listening.
Finally, Tony, if you look out 5 to 10 years, what role do you think Ireland could play in the global automotive value chain?
Sure. I mean, to be honest, Jason, we're talking to companies across the board where there are talent shortages or there are talent requirements or particularly needs for optionality when you're working across time zones. I think Ireland offers a tried and tested high talent workforce. There is a huge demand or huge appetite in Ireland to be supportive to the auto tech industry, particularly. I think the battery electric transition, it might have stalled. Obviously, we've seen different signals from different OEMs here in the US and across Asia and Europe more recently. But I think that's a mega trend that's not going to go away. We've obviously seen Toyota's decision recently to kind of keep investing in this area as others might be pulling back. I think the software-defined vehicle and electric engineering around some of these vehicles as an option will be something we see as a megatrend. I think Ireland stands very ready to support not so much that transition, but that gradual opportunity that I think folks will pay more attention to over time.
Tony, thank you so much. Fascinating look at geography, policy, and new opportunities.
Thanks, Jason. Listen, I really appreciate it. And if there's ever any opportunity for folks to speak to me, I'd be delighted to reach out here in Chicago or in Detroit.
Thanks again to my guest, Tony Hayes from IDA Ireland, and thanks for listening to the program. Come back to this platform for more of your favorite interviews throughout the year. I'm your host, Jason Stein. Appreciate you joining us. We'll see you again next time.